Hello and welcome to Take Control of Your Career. I'm so glad that you've joined us today. We have a great show with a great guest. Today, we are joined by Allison Grealis. She is president of the Women in Manufacturing Association and Education Foundations, and she's also host of the podcast, Hear Her Story. And she'll be bringing us great insights on how we can get more women in leadership in this important industry. So thank you so much for joining us, Allison.
Thanks for having me, Lauren.
Wonderful. Well, since you're all about stories, particularly with your podcast, tell us about your story. What's your background and what brought you to Women in Manufacturing?
Sure. So my name is Allison Grealis, as you mentioned, and I have the great pleasure of serving as the president of the Women in Manufacturing Association and Education Foundation. And years ago, as I first got started and kind of thinking about what I wanted to be when I grew up, I don't think I ever thought I'd probably be connected to manufacturing, but I did always have an interest in working with organizations and volunteering and being connected to something that was mission oriented. So from an early age, when I was in elementary school and high school and college, I was very active in organizations. I was the queen of volunteering. I loved to chair things. I was president of many of the organizations that I volunteered for. And I really just liked the idea of having kind of a common cause and mission, and then mobilizing volunteers and others around that common cause with an ultimate goal of having some type of impact and helping others or changing policies or changing how things worked. So to me, it's very fulfilling present day to get to lead and work with an organization that is very core to the mission of something close to my heart, which is advancing and supporting women. So our work year round is to support, promote, and inspire women in manufacturing careers. And it's so very rewarding to get to work with companies and individuals to that aim, to help women grow in their careers, to have more resources. So very fulfilling, and feel very lucky to be in the position I am present day.
Yeah, awesome. And I love how you tied it back to impact. And so tell us a little bit more about some of the impact that the Women in Manufacturing organization has made for women in this important industry.
So we started our work more than a decade ago. And when I first started the organization and we began with our conference called our Summit, the goal first and foremost was just to connect women in industry. I had at the time more than 10 years experience working with a manufacturing trade association. I was in my 20s at the time and found that there was very often conferences and events and trade shows where there were very few women. And if you were a female in attendance, you often gravitated to the handful and the few other females that were there just to feel a sense of community, to find others that were like you. And what we found is that community didn't exist nationally, and it didn't happen externally outside of manufacturing companies. So our goal was first to put together a conference where we could connect people and provide that sense of community. And from there, we created our first ever summit. Now this is going to be our 11th coming up. And at that summit, people were blown away with, gosh, there are tons of other women like me around the country. This is amazing to have connected with them, to have this support network, and how do we keep this going? So we first started as the conference and then grew into a full service trade association. And our impact has been, working to, again, provide the right resources for companies and individuals. So we deliver formal leadership programs, we deliver year-round virtual learning, live and on demand, and then as well provide lots of opportunities for women to meet others, to network, and to advance their careers. So as we look at the impact in our past 10 years, we've graduated close to 250 women from our formal leadership programs. We
Awesome.
have touched close to 10,000 people through our virtual learning sessions, whether they be those delivered live or on demand. And our chapters are amazing. They're one of our best benefits. We presently have 30 volunteer-led chapters throughout the United States, and next year we hope to have our first international chapter. But those local chapters last year, in a year of pandemic and lots of uncertainty, they rose to the occasion. They helped keep people supported and connected, and they delivered more than 200 local programs. In present day, in all of our years of collaborative chapter offerings and events, we've hosted close to 10,000 people at local chapter events. So we've touched lots of people. We hope to continue impacting lots of people. And as well, the companies that they're employed with. So companies come to us for a variety of different reasons. I would say first and foremost, companies usually come to us with assistance or needing support as it relates to recruiting women
Sure.
to industry. And then as well, for tools and resources to help them retain those individuals as well as to advance them. So it's been very collaborative working with manufacturing companies to say, okay, what are those right training tools and resource tools to help, again, retain women in manufacturing, recruit them to this industry, and help them understand what modern manufacturing is all about, and then as well to help them advance in their careers.
Wow, there's so much there. But one of the things that you said that really resonated with me, that I've heard from countless women in manufacturing as well as in other very male dominated industries, is that sense of isolation that they've had over the years of still being the only women in the room so often. And to go to these events where they're just surrounded by other women who think like they do and who have similar roles and titles, it's very empowering to just love the community that brings. So
yeah, I think community is really important. And I came from a background of kind of personal growing up with my mom kind of fostering this idea of how important it was to have female friends and a community of others that were like you. I went to an all-girls school for high school, and I think that for me professionally and personally made all the difference. It was a very small private girls school. I graduated with a whopping 43 other women, and that community is still one of my closest. I'm actually seeing a few of them this weekend for a little mini reunion. But it's interesting because that sense of community is so important, to have others like you. And I think that's what we're seeing come to the forefront this past year and 18 months, is that especially as people have been isolated at home, many not going to work, many not reporting to an office or facility, having that female camaraderie and that kind of community that people can tap into is hugely important, especially as we've been uniquely challenged this year with this integration of lots of personal demands, trying to balance that with your professional demands, dealing with learning and teaching from home, dealing with lots of kind of changes to our schedules and how we do work. So I think having a community, especially those of females like us, is really important, especially in these times.
yeah, absolutely. Now, one of the things that's interesting about manufacturing is that the demands of the manufacturing process have unique requirements for women who are on the floor, if you will, or anyone who's on the floor. And then as you get into manufacturing, obviously there's a whole different, as you get into leadership, then there's a whole different set of challenges for women. So tell us what you guys are doing to bridge the gap for the challenges for the women on the floor, as well as in leadership.
Yeah, so there's unique skill sets, and I'd say some similar skill sets needed for both women in production or women at the hourly ranks, as well as those who are in leadership positions in manufacturing companies. So, we as an organization have looked at how do we serve every single individual woman who's connected to manufacturing at all levels, not just with design programs for those in management or leadership, but our newest program that we're launching, actually just launched this past week, was our Empowering Women in Production program. So many manufacturing companies were coming to us with the unique challenge of, gosh, I've recruited some amazing women. They're working in production, but I'm having great difficulty in helping them and encouraging them to advance. These individuals didn't see these opportunities or weren't necessarily interested in opportunities to advance and couldn't see that pathway for how to grow within their career and at that company. And so we designed, with manufacturing input and feedback, a curriculum that's pretty robust, and it's specifically designed for women in production. And it is a 20-week program where individuals will go through learning remote. So interestingly, it was designed to be delivered remote even before current pandemic and our current challenges with kind of keeping people safe. So the program is such that it's very focused on soft skills development, helping women have leadership kind of knowledge, acumen, confidence building. And as well, one of the key pieces that we've put into the program is coaching. So for many of these women, this may be their first opportunity for formal leadership or training. And then as well, we're providing assessments along the way for this. So the first step is a pre-assessment to kind of know where each of our participants are. We have close to 100 women, for example, enrolled in this Empowering Women in Production fall cohort. And as well, the coaching component is huge. So each woman gets, I think it is 3 total hours of professional coaching. And then as well, peer coaching is a huge key element of the learning experience. So they go through modules that they listen to within a 1-week window. They have a week to connect with their peer coach and their accountability partner. And then they go back and they learn a new session. And then as well, they have the professional coaching from certified coaches at the beginning, at the end, and the midway point of their experience. So, the goal is to reach people where they are and to design programs for every level. So we have a new managers program that we call our management development program. And then we have 2 executive level programs that are done in partnership with some educational partners, such as Case Western Reserve University, that are meant for that executive level leader in manufacturing to help her have kind of those skill sets and to fill in gaps and to provide her with resources to help her take that next line and that next position of leadership.
Thanks for giving us that context. One of the things that was interesting about what you highlighted at the Women in Production program is just those soft skills, including confidence that, hey, I can get to that next level, or maybe this is something for me. One of the things I'm still constantly intrigued by is the number of women that continue to still have those questioning conversations with themselves about confidence, even as they grow to the most senior level. So I'm curious what you've seen about that in some of these programs as well, because I think confidence affects women at every level still.
It does. And when we do panels, when we host programs, when we have keynote presentations from some of the top leaders and top leading women in manufacturing, so often their final words of wisdom and advice is to kind of fake it till you make it, that, you've got those skill sets, that you've got that ability. You just need to harness it and have confidence in your ability to, if you don't learn, to be able to learn whatever kind of tasks or things that might be asked of you. But to understand that you're a talented individual and that you've got the ability, or you wouldn't be selected to be that person in that current position. And as well, to have the confidence to go for new positions. We see so many women members that we're connected to, and past members as well, that didn't have that confidence to apply for a position, and who didn't necessarily, because they didn't have maybe every single item of criteria or qualification on a job posting, they weren't applying. And so we're trying to help women encourage them to apply, to have that confidence that they've got the right skill sets and ability. And then as well, if they feel they have some areas of improvement or some gaps, we can be a resource to help them grow those areas of their kind of curriculum and their criteria and their expertise.
Fantastic. Yeah. Now, one of the things that you mentioned to me that you're passionate about in terms of leadership qualities is about providing specific and constructive feedback as a critical part of development, particularly for women. So talk to me more about that, and why are you so passionate about that?
Yeah, I think I'm passionate about it because I myself have experienced that in my career. So I've been working with manufacturing trade associations for more than 20 years. And even as an association staff person, I came from grad school, worked for not-for-profit for a year, and then found my position and career with a trade association. I had no experience with what trade associations were. I had understood and worked with lots of not-for-profits. So it was kind of a similar gamut, but a bit uniquely different in that we have, corporate members that are all kind of a similar type, which at that time was small, all for the most part, small to mid-sized privately held companies. And all of my leaders and supervisors for much of my career have been men. And some have felt really comfortable to give feedback, others not so much. And as I've done research and reflected on my career and my trajectory, some of the key catalysts for me moving forward in my career was getting honest and frank feedback. And so often it was a person who was a female who stepped in, who felt more comfortable to give feedback to me than a male counterpart and or direct supervisor. And what I found is that when I would go in for reviews, when I would go in for formal evaluations, we'd have a framework, we'd have a discussion, there'd be certain metrics that you'd be looking at as you would with any performance review on, did you hit these targets? Did you perform to this level? But when it got into honest conversations about what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? What can I do better? There was very little feedback. And without that feedback, how can we grow as leaders and individuals? If I lack, for example, clarity on communications, that's a big issue. And if it's not being told to a budding and a high potential female person as they're rising in their career, that can be a big stumbling block. And it could be a big reason why a person doesn't advance if they have some detriments that are going to stand in their way to advancing. Also, as I've done research over the past few years on reasons women don't advance, one of the key contributing factors is lack of feedback. So again, because of this kind of difficult conversations that I think happens very often with male supervisors, male leaders, male managers, and giving direct and honest and frank feedback to junior women or women that report to them, they're really doing that person a disservice, and it's causing a lesser frequency of advancement. And so if I can share anything, as I do often with, especially those that I mentor and talk to, you have to learn how to have those comfortable conversations, even sometimes those uncomfortable conversations about, here's some areas I'd work on, or here's some areas of improvement, or, just giving that direct feedback is really going to help that person long term.
Yeah, and the research plays that out as well, because a study that Harvard did recently showed that men are more likely to give vague feedback to their female direct reports, like, oh, you had a good year, or you might need to work on your communication. But specific feedback of what exactly do you need to work on, or, okay, you did this great, so let's do more of it very specifically. Those are the kinds of things that actually help someone take it to the next level in their career, rather than just a pat on the back saying, good job.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So I am completely in agreement with you on that. And that's one of the things that, when we do our Women in Leadership programs, one of the things that we do at Impact Group is we make sure that we're talking to the managers as well. As, we're not just trying to fix the women, in some sort of a terrible way to put it, but we're working on the culture as well, because a lot of times men aren't even aware that they might be unconsciously doing some of those kinds of things. So bringing that awareness of, are you doing this, and make sure that you are bringing that specific feedback is one of the things that I am totally in agreement with. One of the things that you also brought up that I love as part of your programs, really throughout the levels of the organization, is coaching as a critical accelerator for women's careers, or really anyone's careers for that matter. So talk to us about the impact that coaching's had on your career and why you're so passionate about it.
Yeah, so it is a part of all of our programs. And we actually, not only our formal leadership programs, to which we have 4 presently, as I mentioned, but we also have integrated now coaching into all of our regional conferences. So we have our big summit, which is our big annual conference, which is the largest in scale, but we do regional programs that are more focused on those verticals in specific geographic areas. And we've added now coaching components to all of those programs to give women an optional advanced opportunity, if they want to participate at no extra cost, in a small mini coaching session. And, why I'm so passionate about it is that I personally have benefited from coaching. It wasn't something that I really ever thought of or was really introduced to early in my career. And it wasn't until I went to a conference where I met an individual who was a coach that I got to hear firsthand about what is coaching, how does it kind of work for individuals, what does a coaching kind of engagement or contract look like. So I went to my boss at the time and said, I met this person at a conference. She's amazing and excellent. I would love to participate in some coaching sessions with her. Thankfully, he was very supportive, as he had been with all of my career. And as well, many of the things that I wanted to do professionally to enhance my kind of learning and understanding. So I engaged in this coaching experience, and it was truly transformational. I had confidence in certain areas, but there were other areas that I was really lacking confidence in. They really focused a lot on communications. So how to communicate effectively, those painful things like recording you when you're speaking, and kind of helping you understand how you're being perceived, whether it be, again, through your oral communications, your written communications.
Bringing some of those blind spots out.
Yeah, those things that you're not even realizing that, hey, I use this word a lot, and how is that being thought of or understood? And so to me, it was really transformational, and as well helped with visioning. So what do I want to do in the next 10 or 20 years of my career? And how do I get there? And how do I make the right decisions and alliances and relationships along the way? So to me, it was transformational. We've seen it be very transformational with the people that participate in our programs. As we have the ratings and the feedback from our educational programs, that's usually one of the most highly rated components, is for people to be able to reflect, to have someone give them, again, direct feedback, direction. And it's just huge. And we're trying to provide it women with all women who'd like it to have the opportunity to have some coaching, whether it be, again, for a small mini session or something more extensive.
Wow. And you do this at no additional cost to your members?
So if you enroll in some of our programs, so, our regional conferences are very affordable, though. They're under $200. And with that, you get, again, a mini coaching session. So maybe it's, again, your first opportunity to have a professional coach, have a small session with you. And then for our larger leadership programs, those are baked into your registration fee, and they're more intensive, the coaching.
That's phenomenal. It sounds like you guys are really doing not only the typical kind of association work of the lobbying and the connecting, but really a much more holistic approach. So I applaud you on how you're looking at the broader concept of getting more women into leadership in a very complex way.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I mean, our goal when we first started our work, the goal was often thrown to us of, so I guess your organization is really just about getting to equity or getting to 50% of the workforce being female. And as we'd love that, I mean, presently we're 29%. When we started our work, it was about 27%. We had a whopping 2% increase since our decade of work, but it's still progress. But as we look at kind of our goals as an organization, yes, we'd like to have more women enter the industry, more women in manufacturing. Right now, it's about 1.5 million. But really, I see organizationally, some of the stuff we're most focused on is really advancing women. So getting to more women in leadership, more women in positions of power where they can change cultures, they can change how women are hired, fired, advanced, all of those things that are critically important. And then as well to help in policies, to help, how do women kind of stay supported? How are workplaces flexible? As you look at kind of the past 18 months plus, we did a survey in 2020, at the close of 2020, and the biggest things that were cited from women in careers in manufacturing that were of critical importance to them were workplace flexibility and childcare. So how do we address those as companies? How can leaders in manufacturing address those things? And I think having more women in leadership who perhaps firsthand have experienced being, that the experience of childcare, the experience of kind of that workplace flexibility, if you're expecting, if you're recently had a child, those things are very unique and very challenging. And if you look at the drop-off rate of people after they've had kids not going back to work, it's huge. And if you see the number of women who left the workforce present day after the pandemic, it's huge. I mean, 2.3 million women have left the workforce. That is a staggering number. And how do we get those women back to the workforce? And again, how do we as a culture and country look at how we support women who have childcare needs?
Absolutely. Tell me, was there any information in the survey that you did that looked at how perhaps some of the men might have experienced the situation with COVID? And has that been able to open their eyes to some of the flexibility requirements that women have, frankly, required or desired for a long time?
Yeah, I mean, if we looked at, so the study that we did wasn't pandemic specific. So it was more about, again, what are women looking for from their current employers and or prospective employers? And those two things that were cited were, again, flexibility in childcare. As we look at media, or if you look at recent reports from many media outlets as well as consulting firms, men have been obviously hugely impacted by COVID as well. There is now, I think, a renewed desire and a more vocalized desire for flexibility, whether you're female or male, and looking for kind of how does a workplace meet all of my human needs, whether it be, me in elder care responsibilities or me in childcare responsibilities. But I think people are looking for more humane places to work where they can balance all of those things that they want to do. And wellness has come to the forefront as well. I mean, talking about mental health is huge. It's been huge for years. We should have been discussing this for a while. We should have been discussing the importance of diversity and equity and inclusion for a while. It's sad that, again, things that happened last summer had to bring this to the forefront for us to finally be having lots and lots of discussions about how do we change our inclusivity as a culture, as a community, as corporations. So I think all of these things are important, irregardless of people's gender. And people are just looking for great places to work. They're looking for places to work where those companies are committed to treating people well, to helping things like the environment, to being sustainable, to being inclusive of people from all different backgrounds. And I think it's challenging companies to take a look at how they do business. And I've seen so many companies do amazing things over the past 18 months to be that best employer for their companies, either both their current, or not for their companies, for their employees, both their current employees as well as prospective and future employees.
Yeah, can you share maybe a couple items that come to the top of your mind or that are at the top of the list of great things, especially in the manufacturing field, where there are those unique requirements where the job has to get done in order for the production line to continue?
Yeah, I mean, the job has to get done, but it can be done in different ways. And so I think that one of those positive outcomes of pandemic, which again, the pandemic was really rough and had a very negative impact on many, but some of the few or the handful of few positive outcomes, one of them was that I think it helped manufacturing companies leap forward in being a bit more progressive as it related to flexibility. So manufacturing companies for the first time in masses are talking about how can we have different work schedules that allow people, even people in production, to have some level of flexibility where they may have an alternative shift, or we look at different shifts that could reach a brand new community of potential workers. Some companies have looked at creating mom shifts, they're calling them, but that's kind of just a name for a more flexible shift that allows someone, whether they be male or female, to drop a child off at school, to come in, to work a different schedule and still yet not have to deal with aftercare and be home in time to get kids off of buses and or pick up kids from school. So I think
Maybe we should work on calling that the parent shift.
The parent shift, exactly. And I don't know if companies are actually calling it the mom shift, but I've heard on panels some manufacturing executives talk about these new types of shifts are rethinking how work gets done and how can you be flexible. And I think, again, at the front line or in production, those things can be had as well. And a lot of human resources managers are looking at what types of programs can those be, what types of shifts or arrangements can be made. We've already seen some manufacturing companies, and we had seen this a few years ago, investing in on-site daycare and childcare for their employees as, again, a huge employee benefit, a huge retention tool. If you want to keep your employees safe and not worrying about where their kids going to be after school, how are they going to be dealing with childcare, an investment in an on-site childcare can be huge.
I love how what you were just talking about is taking away the excuses. So COVID, let me rephrase here, that for the longest time, manufacturing organizations probably had the excuse of saying, oh, we can't do it because, and then, it was just an excuse that everyone accepted. And then this situation required everyone to just think completely different, completely out of the box. And here we are. Now, all of a sudden, we're finding out work can still be done in these other ways. You just have to think a little bit more creatively.
Yeah, and technology plays a piece in that. I mean, if you look at, the modernization of manufacturing facilities and the real-time monitoring you can do on a phone now. I mean, I've been out to dinner with people who are plant managers and production managers, and they're like, oh, I can see that, my machine and my press on line 1 is down and I can fix it from here, or I can send someone in maintenance to go fix it. And it allows people to be untethered at times from necessarily what was where you had to stand at a machine for a certain number of hours for that responsibility and for that role. So I think technology has played a huge piece, but to your point, I've toured probably 1,000 manufacturing companies in my more than 20 years and working with manufacturing trade, groups. And it was very rare that I would go through a company where there was flexibility. And now the tide has turned. And I think it's a huge opportunity. And I think it will help. And I'm pretty positive it's going to help with the recruitment piece. If we've got this pipeline issue and if we're having difficulty recruiting, not only do manufacturers need to improve their marketing and telling their stories of their companies and their amazing employees, and as well, the things that they're doing to give back, to impact daily life, to be, such a vibrant piece of our culture, community, and our just general welfare as a country. But as well, I think companies need to share some of these new flexibility measures that they're offering. I think it's helped companies jump to having some new opportunities for people who are looking for flexibility.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for giving us this insight into your world and some of the work that you at the Women in Manufacturing and Education Foundation are doing to turn the tide on some of the challenges that women and frankly, all people who desire flexibility and some of the things that have come in the last year are going to be benefiting from going forward. So thank you for joining us. And you also have a conference coming up. So why don't you just share that information just in case someone is listening and can go ahead and join.
Sure. So our conference is called our Summit. It happens October 4th through the 6th in Cleveland, Ohio, as well as virtually. So we encourage people to check out our full agenda. Our 3 days is filled with keynotes, 25 educational tracks for all levels and roles in manufacturing. And then as well, we have some amazing live and virtual plant tours. So we encourage people to check it out. And our website is womeninmanufacturing.org. And then our podcast that I host is called Hear Her Story. And we feature each month another story of a manufacturing woman. And again, it's a great discussion and dialogue with women from all different roles and responsibilities and from all over the country. So come join us.
Great. Thanks so much for joining us today, Allison.